1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Who can tell me what's special about that? And would you like me to make a video about it? Because I can. Let me know down below. Hello there, I'm Simon. Welcome to my channel. Today's topic is about fanfiction. But I'm not talking about how fanfiction is a legitimate genre on its own, or about the benefits you can get from reading or writing fanfiction. Not today, not in this video. Instead, I'm talking about some very specific fanfiction ideas. Because I'm someone who tends to have a lot of ideas. Ideas that in many cases I just will never ever be able to do myself. For various reasons. Time being one. I have so many things to do and to write that it'll take ages before I ever get around to those ideas. Or in some cases it just concerns a fandom that I'm just not as well educated in as I would like to be if I were to write fanfiction for it. So today I have for you a list of 25 ideas that I will set free to the world. If any of this inspires you, please go out and write, because I would love to read them. So if you end up writing one of these, or if you happen to know that one of these has already been written, please let me know down below, because I would love to read them. That's it. Let's get into it. Idea number 1, Doctor Who. Now, that sounds very vague, of course. Makes sense. But I do have a specific idea for this. The idea is that the Doctor and their companion lands with their TARDIS in like a village. And it turns out that the village has been terrorized by mysterious visitors that they don't know who they are, but they keep wrecking stuff. Always the same stuff. And they keep fixing them in the day, but then they'll be broken again. So then the Doctor lands and they set up a sort of adventuring party, I guess, to try and figure out what is going on and to solve the problem. Turns out the village is somehow stuck in a time loop, and these mysterious visitors are in fact the Doctor and their companions. They figure out what's wrong and they fix it. Idea number 2, Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. An idea is so obvious that I am 99.999 ad infinitum % certain that this is already out there somewhere. So the idea is that Jack the Ripper is doing his thing and Sherlock Holmes tries to find him. I mean, need I say more? The interesting thing to figure out from a writing point of view is gonna be to figure out how you're gonna end this. Because Jack the Ripper was never caught. But on the other hand, Sherlock Holmes not finding the culprit, that's just ridiculous. So, what you gonna do? Idea number 3. This one is very much about current affairs. So, if you're seeing this in like 10 years or so, you may not even know what I'm talking about. So the idea is the wizarding world in quarantine. Because yeah, as we all know, there is still a pandemic going on, and a lot of people are going into quarantine. And I would think it would be very interesting to see, on the one hand, how would the wizarding world deal with a pandemic? Would they very quickly find a spell or a potion to cure it? Or what would they do? How would they deal with a pandemic? On the other hand, the psychological aspect. Because just imagine if the wizarding world as we know it, the Weasleys, for example, what if they had to go into quarantine? How would they deal with that? I think that would be very interesting to explore. Idea number 4. The Battle of Hogwarts. The Battle of Hogwarts is intense. A lot of things happen there. So I think it will be very interesting to see what happens. To see the stories of some other people. Maybe some Aurors, the Order of Phoenix, students that are not in Dumbledore's army. Or maybe they are, but we just never met them. See how they fare in the battle. See what they get up to. How they survive or don't survive. More specifically, I was thinking, if you've ever seen How I Met Your Mother, there is an episode where Lily and Marshall have a house party. Something with Gouda. And the episode is told, first what happens in it's been a while since I saw it, but first what happens in the living room, then what happens in the hall, what happens in the kitchen, and throughout these separate storylines you already get glimpses of what happens in the other rooms, but you don't really figure out what's happening there until you get to that room. And I think it would be very interesting to try something like that with the Battle of Hogwarts. Have a bunch of different storylines about different people, where you get throughout each storyline, you get glimpses of the other storylines, but they don't quite match up until maybe the end or maybe not at all. And you can try different storylines as well. Maybe a couple that are terrified of losing each other. Maybe a Slytherin student who decided to stay and ends up fighting their parents. Maybe a group of friends, maybe the chasers of, for example, Ravenclaw Quidditch team, that use their teamwork capabilities to survive and to fight. Stuff like that. There's plenty of options here. Idea number 5. The Wedding of Percabeth. This is an idea that a lot of Percy Jackson fans have imagined before. The wedding of Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase. So I think it would be awesome to see what happens there. What are some of the things that they get up to? Do they get attacked, maybe? There's probably some monsters there. Come on. The hunters would probably show up. Which of the gods would show up? I mean, Athena and Poseidon, obviously, but who else? I think Hestia. I don't think they would have invited Hera. But also, what are some of the shenanigans that the Seven get up to there? How does Sally and Paul react to it? Frederick Chase and her brothers. What will be the dynamic between Athena and Poseidon there? Also, the empathic link that still exists between Percy and Grover. What would that do? There's a good chance this is already out there, so let me know. I want to read this. Idea number 6. This could be a Star Trek fanfic or an Orville fanfic. If you haven't seen the Orville, it's a parody series of Star Trek, made by Seth MacFarlane. And it is comedy, but it's also really good. So the idea is that some ship, like the Orville or the Enterprise, is traveling through space, as you do, and they run into a pirate ship, space pirates, who enter the ship and take it over. My idea was also to have the pirates at some point near the end shoot the captain. Captain dies then, and how does the first officer deal with the idea of taking over, becoming the captain? Idea number 7. A Cursed Child rewrite. I have mentioned on this channel before that I don't particularly like The Cursed Child. It has a lot of problems. Let's just put it that way. It has a lot of problems. But one of them is that it tries to bring the story of a bad relationship between a father and a son that deteriorates over the course of years. And it tries to do that in a play. Now, plays are not the best medium for something like that. That part of the story certainly would benefit enormously from not being a play, but instead being a novel. It would be beneficial to just rewrite The Cursed Child in prose, so you can dive deeper into not just what happens to make that relationship deteriorate, but also the feelings and the thoughts that go with it. So I think it would be good to just rewrite it in prose. While you're at it, just solve the rest of the problems, like take out the candy lady, take out what happens with Cedric. In fact, don't make it about changing history at all. Make it a fixed timeline again, like it was in Prisoner of Azkaban. Make it a fixed timeline. They try to change history, but they just can't. That way you can focus less on changing the past and fixing it, and more on the psychological part of it. Like, we can't change the past. Now what? How do we deal with this? And take out Delphi. For the love of Wizard God, take out Delphi. Idea number 8. The Hogwarts Founders. This is an idea that's very popular amongst fans. So there's probably already a fanfiction or 20 out there. My idea was to focus on how do they meet? How did they come up with the idea for Hogwarts? It would be an excellent excuse to explore the educational system, I guess, as far as there was one, before Hogwarts. I think they would have like a master and an apprentice kind of thing. My idea was to have Slytherin and Gryffindor be apprentices to the same wizard, to the same master. Maybe the father of Ravenclaw, who they meet then. Maybe Hufflepuff would come along, want to be taught as well, and then do a Katara, break the patriarchy, and be taught as well. Maybe become the girlfriend of Gryffindor or Slytherin or Ravenclaw. Yeah, it would be awesome to then see like how they meet, and then how they become friends, how their friendship evolves, and how they come up with the idea to found a school, to build Hogwarts. And how they come up with all those ideas, like those crazy stairs, the sorting hat, but also to see like how Slytherin evolves, how their relationship with Slytherin evolves, what drove them apart in the end. And of course to see like the role of Muggles at this time. What makes Slytherin think the things that he thought? That's a sentence. Probably already a thing though, so let me know down below. Idea number 9. Dark Mario. This is a Super Mario thing. The idea is that this is set in like downtown New York, and Mario is a plumber, obviously. But he's a plumber with a crippling addiction to mushrooms. And those mushrooms give him hallucinations. Hallucinations that make him see the world in a very weird way. And that makes him think that his girlfriend was actually kidnapped by this huge buff punker dude who wants to force her to marry him. Of course, in reality, she just dumped him and is now happily married to that punker dude. But he doesn't know that. He doesn't realize that because of his addiction. And so he thinks it's his duty to rescue her. So I think that would be very interesting to see, on the one hand, the weird things as Mario sees them, which would be more like the game. And on the other hand, the darker, grittier reality. I didn't say it was a happy idea. It is really dark, but it is one with potential. Number 10. A Hogwarts Musical. I may have had the idea to write a Hogwarts Musical, which would be like basically High School Musical, but at Hogwarts with a better plot. Didn't come too much of it. The idea is that it's about a group of Ravenclaw students. Mainly because I'm a Ravenclaw, and because Ravenclaw does not get enough representation. One of them returns from a vacation in Greece, and from there they brought a special drink, which turns out to be kind of a drug. And the musical would be about the effects of this drug on the people of Ravenclaw, the people of Hogwarts, what it does to people, what it does to relationships. Idea number 11, a Captain Hook prequel. So this idea came about mainly because of a video of film theory. I'll leave a link below or somewhere. Apparently it's just canon that Captain Hook used to be a bosun in the fleet of Blackbeard. So I think it would be very interesting to see that story. How did Hook end up in the fleet of Blackbeard, first of all? And how did he go from being a bosun to leading a ship in the fleet to ending up in Neverland? How did that happen? Idea number 12. A casual day at Camp Half-Blood. We've seen Camp Half-Blood pretty well. We have a pretty good idea of what happens there. We haven't really seen a casual day there yet. What happens on a normal day when they're not being attacked? When there's not some surprise demigod of the three elder gods turning up? What happens on a normal day? I would like to see that. Idea number 13. The Disney Siege. What the Hades am I talking about? Well, a while ago, I'll leave a link somewhere, a channel called Shadiversity made a video about the Disney Castle, about what it would look like and how well it might fare in a siege. So I figured it would be awesome to see that castle under a siege. How would the inhabitants deal with that? What would happen and how would they fight? It might be interesting to see the actual princesses turn up to fight. Idea number 14. Mrs. Norris and Minerva McGonagall. Because they are the most important, or at least the best known, cats at Hogwarts, right? They have to interact at some point. And how would that go? How would they meet? Where would they meet? Would they fight? Would they try to ignore each other? Or would people ship them? I can totally see that happen. Idea number 15. The Daughter of Neptune. So imagine this. Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase are in New Rome studying at university. And then they get the news that a mysterious girl has turned up in Camp Jupiter. And she turns out to be a Daughter of Neptune. How would that go? What would she be like? What would their relationship be? How would she do at Camp Jupiter? I think Percy would be very protective of her. I don't think she would really need it. Idea number 16. Anya and Dima. This is about Anastasia. The idea of this would be that at the end, Anya and Dima run off into the unknown. I just think it would be interesting to see their further adventures. Like, what do they get up to? Do they build a life? Where do they build a life? How do they do it? And how does Anya fare with trying to live with who she used to be and who she is now, and with the loss of her family? Idea number 17. A Blackadder Prequel. This idea would happen actually not during any of the series, but before. During the time of Alfred the Great. Because Alfred the Great had a grandson called Edmund. I think it would be fun to make that grandson, who by the way would later end up being the king, King Edmund I, to make that Edmund Blackadder, the first Blackadder. And to just see like what will happen, what Edmund tries to become king. Idea number 18. Tales from the Jasmine Dragon. So, for those of you who don't know, during and after the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Uncle Iroh, who may or may not be the Avatar, actually starts a tea shop called the Jasmine Dragon. And I think it would be fun to have like a series of fanfics, I guess, maybe with like a window story about Iroh, about people coming to that shop and telling their stories, to give us an insight into the lives of the smaller people in this story, in this world. Maybe explore the world building a bit more. Idea number 19. This is very similar to idea 16 about Anya Dima, but this one is about Road to El Dorado, the further adventures of Miguel and Tulio. Of course, if you have seen the film, you know that Miguel and Tulio are the heroes of Road to El Dorado, and they make a wonderful pair. And at the end of the film, they leave El Dorado. But where do they go? What more adventures do they have? I want to see. Come on. That's a treasure trove of potential hilariousness and wickedness and epicness. Idea number 20. The 7 meets the DA. I have made an entire video about how Harry Potter, the world of Harry Potter, and the world of Percy Jackson are connected, right? If you haven't seen that, it will be... So those two worlds are connected. Like the heroes, the 7 and Dumbledore's army, would have to meet, wouldn't they? At some point? I think so. So what would they talk about? How would they meet? When would they meet? Where would they meet? All that. All that would provide so much hilariousness. You can choose to ignore the timeline. It would be funnier to have them meet when they're both sides are in their prime. If you stick to the timeline, the Harry Potter characters would have to be like middle-aged at this point. Idea number 21. This one only makes sense if you've seen a Harry Potter musical. Quirrelmort. If you've read or seen The Philosopher's Stone, you'll know that Quirrell, Professor Quirrell, is the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher who is wearing a turban and has Voldemort sticking out of the back of his head. At the end, these two kind of become a couple in the musical. Of course, in the book and the film, Quirrell dies, but that's not what happens in the musical. So, I kind of want to see the shenanigans they get up to. Like, their relationship. How the Hades did they make that work? Also, they end up adopting... I'm interested to see how they would do the parenting. What kind of parents would they be? What kind of parent would two men who share a body be? Idea number 22. A scientific avatar. The story of Avatar: The Last Airbender, with those characters and all that, except in the modern world, our world. And the bending is not bending the 4 elements of, what was it? Earth, fire, air, water. It's not those 4. It is in fact bending the 118 elements of the periodic table. That's what I mean with a scientific avatar. Idea number 23. Camp Half-Blood tries D&D. In an earlier video, I talked about the games that the 7 could try together. And I mentioned that Dungeons and Dragons might be a good training method for them. And that maybe Chiron would make a great DM. So I think it would be fun to see that happen. What would they do to adapt the system to their needs? Would they write the documents in Greek? Would they use Greek dice like this? Can you see that? Would they use Greek dice? Maybe. How would it go? Would it be very chaotic? Probably. Idea number 24. Firelord Iroh. Now, you may think that this is about what would have happened, like an alternate universe, an alternate timeline. What would have happened if Iroh had become the Firelord, if, like, it was planned? But that's not the idea. Because in one of the comics, I think it was The Search, they leave for a while and Zuko comes with them. so they need a replacement Firelord for a bit. And Iroh very happily takes the job. And I kinda wanna see what happens in the Fire Nation, in the palace, while this happy, tea-loving guy is Firelord. I think that would make for some great comedy. Final idea. Number 25. Mary Lou Blackstone at Ilvermorny. In that same video where I talked about how Percy Jackson and Harry Potter happen in the same universe, I also mentioned that of course means that the children of Hecate, at least the ones in the United States, would have to attend Ilvermorny because they're of magical blood. So I kind of want to see this demigod, this direct descendant, they're all direct descendants, this direct child, direct daughter of Hecate, of the goddess of magic, how she would do it at Ilvermorny. And with that said, that brings me to the end of the video, which is good because my battery is dying. So I'm not gonna make the YouTube thing too long. Let me know if you have other ideas for fan fictions, or let me know if you happen to know some of these ideas have already been done. Though that kind of falls under comment. Down below you also find my Twitter and my Goodreads if you want to go follow me there. I think that's all I can say. So thanks for watching.